Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We are so excited for this Build Along webinar and to share more about AI agents. As we're all waiting for all of our attendees to join, please drop in the chat where you're joining from. I'm based in DC. Sarah?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. We have East Coast represent.
Yeah. Wow. So many people here from all over. Awesome. Oh, I see other people from DC as well. Very cool. All right. Well, we've got a ton of people joining right now as we speak. So I'm just going to go ahead and get into some of the housekeeping. We're really pumped to show you our use cases for AI agents. I just want to plug that this is a safe space to experiment, ask questions, and it is a controlled environment. So if you break anything, it's going to be okay. A few housekeeping items before we get into the meat of the webinar. So first, yes, this webinar is absolutely going to be recorded, and then we're going to make it available to everybody after the event. And then as well as any resources like links or templates that we share today, we're going to provide that to you all as well. So you don't feel like you have to scramble to take notes. Okay, and then one last thing before I move on to introducing our speakers, please make sure that you are logged into Zapier. Pull up a tab, log in. If you have dual monitors, this is the best time to use it. Once we get to the build section, we're going to want you to just like jump right in. All right, awesome. So moving on to introducing our speakers. So first I want to introduce Sara. She is our Senior Revenue Operations Specialist, and I'm Lena, Marketing Operations Manager at Zapier. So Sara and I sit on a centralized RevOps team. Now, what that means is that functions like marketing ops, sales ops, success ops, as well as things like sales enablement and sales analytics all sit on a centralized RevOps team. Sara and I partner together most often on anything that is related to handoffs from sales to our CSM teams. Basically, we try to take real life problems and solve them with tooling, automation, AI, and it can sometimes feel like magic when we're doing all these things with all these cool systems. So I would describe Sara as a builder. She's not in a role like engineering, but she is someone who is comfortable navigating in tools like HubSpot, Vitally, and of course, Zapier. I have a similar skill set, but I would say that I am maybe a bit less technical. While I'm comfortable in CRMs, marketing automation platforms, I am the person on the team who learned how to use webhooks last. So I just want to say, if I can learn how to use an agent, so can you. And we're going to teach you how to do that today. All right. For our next slide, I want to introduce Sara a bit further. She's going to be very embarrassed by this slide, and I am not sorry about it. So in case you didn't know, Sara won our internal Zapier hackathon. What that means is annually we host different themes, and this year it was how AI can reshape how we operate across GTM. And you guys are in for a real treat because Sara's demo is going to be her winning solution. So it's really cool. I can't wait for you guys to see it. Plus, she's a Zapier power user. I pulled these numbers yesterday. So Sara was the 8th top Zapier user internally. And as you can imagine, we're power users of our own products. And that's out of like 800 employees. And finally, a little fun fact, in our team water cooler discussions, Sara and I have both established that we are not interested in fighting against a zombie outbreak. We are just not meant for that life.
We need our lefties.
All right, I'm glad I could introduce you to Sara a little bit further before we get into it.
And then I saw Lena's slide about me, and I had to get payback. And so here's every emoji we have in our Slack that we can use to react to Lena with. She has her own collection of these alter ego emojis, and her alter ego is named Mina. So you don't want to bring Mina out.
Thank you for this payback, Sara. This was pretty hilarious. Love that you snuck this in this morning. All right, moving on. So before we get into the meat, I just want to get a sense of how familiar you all are with agents. So have you built an AI agent before? And we're going to pull up a poll in the webinar platform so everybody can answer. Yeah, looking at the chat, a lot of people are saying no. A few people are saying yes.
The poll results, early results show 50% haven't built an agent, but they have built a Zap.
Nice. Okay. So most of you are familiar with Zapier, but not agents. A few of you, maybe 26%, have built an agent, whether or not it's been on Zapier. Okay, awesome. That is what we expected for the audience. So for those that have not built an agent before, you are in good company. Sarah, when did you build your first agent?
Yeah, so I was remembering some gossip as we talked about this. Since I work at Zapier, I get a lot of really early previews into our new products. And so I think the first time I saw our agents product was like a year ago, and I was not convinced by it a year ago when it was still really early in its beta stage. And so I didn't revisit agents until a couple months ago, maybe. And that's when I really started building and learning what agents can do. It's gotten way better since the beta stage. And so I've been an agents user for like 2 months now.
Yeah, I'm actually on a similar timeline. I only started using agents a couple months ago. So that just goes to show it doesn't take a lot to learn how to use it. All right, agenda. So first, Sarah's going to give a high-level overview of just how agents work. I will walk through a really simple use case and just break down the basics. Then Sarah will walk through her award-winning use case, and we will wrap up with the Q&A. So if you came in late, please make sure you're logged into Zapier. That way, when we get to the build part, you're just ready to go. And for those asking in the chat, yes, this is being recorded. We will send out the recording plus any additional resources that we share today in a follow-up email. All right, handing it over to Sarah.
Cool. So we're going to talk about what an AI agent is. Since a lot of people, this is brand new information, we just want to cover the basics. Simply put, an agent is a software that allows you to feed it context. You can have it make decisions and take actions based on the goals you give it, and it requires no human intervention. So Zapier Agents is just an example of an AI agent builder. And in my opinion, it's one of the best, but that's totally unbiased. And then with Zapier, you can create as many AI agents as you want using plain natural language. So you can give it roles, access to your apps and business data, and give it instructions to do your work for you, like a little coworker. With agents, you get access to Zapier's entire platform of apps. We have over 8,000 apps connected. Every app has multiple triggers and actions, giving you a big breadth of data to pull from. Some common ones we use in RevOps are HubSpot. We use Slack as Zapier, Asana for project management. And so you can basically just build an agent with all of the tools that you're already using on Zapier's platform. We're going to cover a quick use case. Emily Maybe, our coworker on sales enablement in RevOps, is also doing an agent's demo for HR use cases right now. And so this is her lovely agent that she built as a new hire welcome bot recommendation tool. So you can see she has her tools in here. She's using Gmail, and she uses natural language to describe what the agent should do. And it ends up searching for and outputting a welcome box for new hires. To dive into a little deeper how she set this up, the first thing you're going to do when you build an agent is set a trigger. This is very, very similar to how Zaps work, and a lot of you have built a Zap before, so you might be familiar with this. But a trigger is basically the start of your workflow. If you're using the sentence when blank happens, then blank, this is the when something happens stage. So I think Emily is doing here when she gets when a new email is created in our Gmail instance, then we want to go ahead and create that welcome box. The first blank is the trigger. Now you can see she's using plain natural language. So this is where we really start differing from what Zapier's primary workflow product does. Instead of doing these as like different actions with very deterministic steps, she is writing the information in plain natural language and letting AI make decisions on what should be done afterwards. And this is the then part of the workflow. Yeah, cool. I'll kick it back to you, Lena, for your demo.
Sounds good. Thanks for going over that, Sarah. So like I said, in our first use case, I'm going to show you how to set up an agent it's a very basic use case. So this agent validates email addresses of contacts that were created in the last month. We're going to show you a pre-recorded demo first. And then I see people asking in the chat, do we have templates or something you could start with? Yes. So we're going to show the pre-recorded demo first, and then we will walk through the template together. So when the team is ready, we can queue up the demo. Hey everyone, let's walk through how to validate email addresses using a Zapier agent. So in my example, I have my agent scheduled to run on the first of every month. And I gave it the instructions to retrieve contacts from our CRM that were created in the last month. It's going to extract the email addresses, send to zero bounce to validate. And then if any are invalid, it will send a signal back to HubSpot, update a property so that we know that they're invalid. And then it's going to compile a Slack summary for us. It will include the number of email addresses it validated, the number of which were invalid, but then also the AI will spit out a summary of any reoccurring patterns in the spam domains, just in case we need to share those with any relevant teams. And then finally, it's going to post the message to Slack. So if you've not used a Zapier agent before, the benefit of an agent versus a Zap is that the agent is a lot more flexible. Think about it as a AI helper. And so if you're setting up a Zap with all of these steps, you have to put these steps into the Zap yourself, configure them, make sure they're sending data to the next step correctly. An AI agent can do all of that for you. I've only written the instructions. It will consider the best way to accomplish each of these steps. It focuses more on the goals, whereas with the Zap, you have to focus more on the task. So I've given it all the instructions here. Let's run it and see how it works. And just for this example, instead of running the of the list for everyone that was created in the last month, I'm going to give it a specific prompt. And we're going to say, just for today, modify the workflow so that we are just looking at these specific email addresses. These are some dummy email addresses that are in our CRM. This way I don't have to run and revalidate all of the contacts that we previously created last month, which is a lot of contacts. So we're just going to hit enter. And then you can see how the agent is thinking about running these steps live here on the right side. And as you're testing it, it will give you feedback. It might ask you to approve or review some things. When this runs for real, you won't need to do that. It runs independently. There's nothing you have to like click or push or anything. And so we're just going to go ahead and approve it. And you can see it's going through the email addresses and just validating through zero bounce right now. And now it is prepping to send information back to HubSpot for any of the invalid emails. Okay, so it is now getting ready to prep the Slack message that I've asked for with the summary. And so here's the summary, and we're going to go ahead and prove it so it posts to Slack. Okay, and it has officially finished running. Let me pull up the Slack message so you can see what this looks like. And it does match what it ran over here on the right side. And you'll notice that I did not tell my agent how to do any of the Slack formatting. The AI just figured it out itself on like what made sense to format, what to bold, like all that type of stuff. And it even knew to include this detail, so to contact me if there was any additional information that people had, because I am the one that created the agent, so it knew to do that. And so that is how you would set this up through an agent. And like I said, it's very customizable. So if you are wanting to pull in other systems, maybe you use multiple email platforms, or even if like you wanted to post the summary, not just in Slack, but in a documentation platform that you use or project management platform you use, you can post it there as well. And all you have to do is add the steps here. If you want to be really specific, like let's say there is a specific format on how you want this Slack message to look, you can give your agent that instruction. But if you don't, the AI is smart enough to figure out how to do this all for you. All right, and that is how you set up an email validation workflow through Zapier agents. Okay, awesome. So now we're going to walk through the actual template. So the team is going to drop in the link to the template for this particular agent, and then I will pull up my screen so that we can go through it together. For those of you asking in the chat, if you don't use these systems or if this use case isn't totally applicable, that is okay. I'm going to walk you through how to adjust the agent for that. Let me just switch over to my other screen here. All right. So when you pull up the template, it should look something like this. So it's already got the trigger and some of the tooling already set up in here. And then you can click use this template. If you don't have these tools, that's fine. You can skip this part. You'll notice that because I already have my connection set up, it already preloaded them for me. But if you don't have it, just click skip. That's okay. You can edit this in the actual agent. And we're just going to go ahead and click create. Okay, so one thing to know, we have Copilot. If you haven't tried it before, it's really cool. You can ask Copilot questions and it can help you figure out exactly how to adjust your agent. Or any questions you have about the tooling, you can ask it here. So first, I know people were asking about the trigger, like what exactly constitutes a month. So in here, I have the trigger set to schedule every month, and it's the day of the month. So like you'd pick whatever day that is, and then you can pick the time as well. We can also replace this. And so Schedule by Zapier has a bunch of different options. You can do day, hour, month, week, whatever makes sense for you. But for the purposes of this use case, monthly at the top of every month makes sense. So like we've been saying, this is all written in natural language, meaning like this is how I'd write the instructions for if I was like out of office and I needed to leave Sarah instructions for how to pull this, right? It's written in that style. You can go, if you click into these, you can edit your tooling permissions, or you can definitely replace them. Just click that add tools button and you can search through these. But there's a bunch of different options if these tools are not in your tech stack. And then if this use case, like validating email bounces, is not a use case that you need, the crux of this really is that we are retrieving information for one system. Then we're asking it to do a couple of jobs. First, extracting the email. Oh, sorry about that. And then we're asking it to validate. So that's two jobs already. And then the third job is to send a signal back to the CRM to mark them as invalid. Third job. And then finally, compiling the summary. That's the fourth job. So for this job, though, I think this is the most interesting. Using AI to do sort of this analysis where it's like pattern recognition is super helpful. It's not an analysis that requires like a human in the loop. You don't need, we all know that AI hallucinates. You don't need to review this typically. And usually AI is going to do this better than we can. And so notice how I just wrote this in a way that is just instructing it to find patterns. I did give it some examples of looking for spam domains or patterns in domains, but I didn't write more than like 2 sentences because agents can make decisions for you without you giving it really specific instructions. And then finally, the last job is to compile the summary and send that over to Slack. I do want to call out this specifically. I don't know why I have trouble with this, but when I'm setting up a Zap and I have a Slack step, I just can never format that step correctly. It takes me like 5 times. I have to test it a million times to make sure that the formatting is right. So if I click into this, you can see that you can set a channel here. I picked testing just for my demo. And then you could give it instructions for how to format the text. I didn't do that. It knew to bold things, add emojis, put things in bullets. This is not something I had to tell it to do. An agent is really good at making those decisions for you. And then finally, I like to put an expected outcome here. What is helpful here is like, this is sort of the step-by-step instructions, right? And then this is just the TLDR. I think it's helpful for the agent when it's trying to make decisions to see both sort of like the trees and the forest, if that makes sense. And then, of course, if you're doing something that requires like a lot of API calls, this is how I like to test it. I give it a sample size so that we're not pulling like literally every contact. And then this just helps us run the test a little bit faster. Let me just check in the chat and just see if there's any questions about what I went over. And like I said, you can adjust all of the tooling or the use case to be what you need. Sometimes it's nice just to start with a template because it's easier to edit something that already exists. All right. We do have a second demo. And so I'm going to switch back over so that Sara can jump into hers.
Cool. So I am going to live build something with y'all today, which means I don't have anything built yet. I am just going to, from scratch, talk about how I set up my AI Hack Week project. This project was specifically tailored to scale renewals. We have a lot of enterprise renewals coming up in the next couple of months. And so we needed a way to quickly determine whether those renewals should be handled by our sales team or our renewal management team. So making a decision about whether those customers are renewing on flat, if there's a contraction risk, or if there's an expansion opportunity. I'm feeding information to the agent in order to give it context on that renewal and make a decision and update it in HubSpot and send information to Slack. So that's broad overview of what I'm going to do. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to hope this works. Everyone say a little prayer for me because I've never done this before. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
A few people are saying the GIF is distracting, so I am just going to put it on this slide.
Okay, cool. Are you looking at my Google Doc? Lena, can you confirm?
Yep.
That I share my screen correctly? Okay, great. Okay, so where I am starting with this workflow is in a HubSpot workflow. Obviously, whatever CRM you use, this could be extrapolated to that. And for me, what I'm doing is when a renewal date is coming up in 90 days, that's when I want this workflow to trigger. I want a decision between sales or renewal manager made 90 days before the customer renews. And so what I'm going to do to get to the agent part is first add a webhook step. And this is going to trigger a Zap, which is then going to collect a bunch of data about our customers. So I'm going to go ahead in here, add a webhook step. And then in my Zap, where I want to collect information, I'm going to start with a webhook catch request. And then go ahead and take this little URL it gives me, paste it right in here. And then I'm going to customize the properties that I'm sending to the Zap. The only thing I need in here is an account ID. I gave myself a little account ID right here that I can test with. Oops. If it listens to me. Oh, I'm going to dynamically put the account ID in here. And then I will test the action with that account ID. Okay. And now I'll come back to the Zap, test it, and we should get that account ID in here in our test data. There's our account ID. And now what I'm going to do is start collecting data about this customer. So this is Zapier's internal account ID. I'm going to look up that information in Looker. I'm using a Looker code step. So what I did was I went to Looker and I got the look ML for a certain query. Right now I'm collecting product usage data. And I'm going to query that. It's a little complicated. I definitely wouldn't recommend starting with this, but you can start with any data you have available. So if you have information in HubSpot or Amplitude or your CSP like Vitally or Gainsight, you can add those actions here to start getting information about the customer that you want. So I'm going to get my Looker auth token real quick, and then that's going to populate there. I'm going to map in the account ID. And then we're going to see what our top Zaps in the Zapier internal account were over the last couple of months. I didn't mean to skip my test. And then what I'm going to do is add that information to a digest by Zapier. And what this is going to do is create a little, like, I don't know what to call it, but like a little summarized thing of the product information we get back from Looker that I can then give to my agent to pull information about this customer. And what this does is now, instead of doing all of this in the agent, I'm getting it all in a Zap and compiling it all so that I can run all these steps separately, and the agent isn't trying to figure out all this context in addition to doing what I'm actually asking it to do, which is make a contextual decision between renewal manager or sales. So I'm going to go ahead and append this entry and schedule a digest. Product usage, and then I'm going to put in the specific account ID here. I'm going to map it in dynamically, so that way when we get to the agent, I can tell it exactly which account I'm referring to getting this information for. So it's not pulling information for other account IDs or anyone else that comes through this workflow. And then here I'm going to map all of the step output here. Sometimes you might need to truncate this data because it might be too much to handle if you have a lot of data coming in, but we'll just see what happens here. I'm going to pair it with a separate release digest, and that's going to happen in the agent itself. Okay, so now you can see all of this Zap history, Zap usage history is in the digest. I'm going to go back to my HubSpot workflow, save that webhook, and then I'm going to trigger a separate webhook, which is going to be my agent Zap. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to add another webhook. We're going to get that URL again. Where are we? Right there. Okay, calm down. And then I'm going to customize this again. I'm going to add account ID again. There's my account ID. And then I'm also going to add the deal object ID so that we can manipulate that in a Zap. Record ID. Okay, great. Now I'm going to test it again. I'm going to grab my IDs here. And then I'll come over here and get that information. And now we are going to the actual agent. So just as a recap for what we've done so far, I have a renewal deal, 90 days from the renewal. First, I'm going to run this app and get all the information about the customer. So I'm using Looker data here, but you can use any tool that your company stores customer information in to compile all that information into a single digest. I'm going to delay for 5 minutes just so this app has time to run. And then I'm going to trigger a separate Zap to run the agent on. So I'm going to map in that account ID one more time. And then I've given it a few different properties that I want it to return in this app. So primarily, I want it to decide a deal type. Is it a churn, downgrade, flat renewal, task expansion, etc.? And this is just telling the agent what fields I want it to send back to this app. That means that when we test this, we'll be able to pull these properties into other actions later in the workflow. So you'll see I'll use this to update the deal with deal type so that we can report on what kind of renewal we expect this to be. And then we'll also have this key analysis results, which is what the agent will return when it analyzes product usage. And we'll ask it to create a handoff email draft so that we speed up that handoff time a little bit. Let me make sure I have this all set up. Okay. And now we're going to go to the agent itself. So I'm giving the agent a lot of context. You can see I've triggered it via Zap, and let me actually make sure I set that up right. Yeah, okay. I'm selecting the agent that I want there, and then I'm going to go to this agent. I already have a lot of context in here, and that'll be in the template. So if you're doing something similar to this use case, you won't need to repeat this. What I am going to do that you might want to do yourself too is come in here and add data integrations with your program docs. So our customer success director is very good at creating comprehensive strategic documents. And I don't want to have to rewrite all that and tell this agent what we're focused on. Instead, I just want to add a document that the AI can use to make assessments about what a good renewal looks like or what our general success program looks like as Zapier. So I'm going to add this customer success program document as a data source here. And then I'm also going to add our renewal run book, which describes what sales and renewal managers should do when they get a renewal deal assigned to them. Did I click the right thing? I think I must have. And then I'm going to do the renewal runbook. And now every time this agent runs, it'll double check these documents to form a perspective on what a renewal would look like if it was a very strong renewal. So do we see a lot of task utilization? Do we see a lot of senior stakeholders involved in this deal? That's part of what I'm pulling in my like actual live version. And the agent is going to have a lot of context to make a decision with these in here. The other thing I'm going to do is pull in that digest. So I'm going to add a tool. I'm going to add a digest by Zapier action. We're going to find digest. And then the AI agent will pick, but you can see I've already told it what digest to look at. So I'm going to take the name. I can't remember what I wrote in there. Product usage right there. And paste it in right there. So now every time this agent runs, it's going to find that digest specific to the account ID I'm triggering off of, and then run a bunch of context questions based on our renewal program, our customer success program. I have a Glean chat search in here so that it can look in our Slack and find relevant context there as well. It'll look up news about the customer and decide if there's anything there that would impact the renewal. And then I've described what I want it to return to this app. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and test this out. But it says I don't have an account ID mapped. Why is it telling me that? We're gonna see what happens there. And then I'll come over to the agent and just double check that that's running. Okay, that's running. And then in the Zap, what I would do if this was a live use case is I would go and add a HubSpot step to update that deal. Update deal. My humble brag is that, I don't know if you saw that, we have 619 Zaps running in HubSpot, and it grows all the time. I always try and catch our milestones. And then here I'm going to map that object ID here and search for deal type as a property. And here I'm going to dynamically map in whatever the agent decides that deal type is. And this is just going to help us keep a good CRM hygiene and speed up the time it takes to make these handoffs from CS to sales or the renewal team. I'm going to go ahead and map in that deal type. I also have properties for that handoff summary so that sales or the renewal manager can really easily see it. And so you can map that in as well. It's going to take me a minute to find that property, but I'll just pretend. I'll show you what that might look like. So you just map in that handoff email draft, and then in HubSpot, the sales rep would easily be able to copy and paste that. Let me give this a little refresh and see if it decided to finish. You can see it's making decisions about product usage here. The one thing I will say, I've noticed if you don't delete the steps that you're not using, it really confuses the agent. It thinks that you want to use those tools. So in my live version, I obviously have all these steps here, but I didn't build it in for our demo. I would recommend keeping a really clean workflow here by removing the actions that you're not using in this particular agent so that it doesn't get confused about what you actually want it to do. You can see it's trying to do all kinds of stuff in HubSpot, but I don't want it to do that in this use case. Either way, though, it did move on. It accomplished what it wanted to do, moved on to a next step. I've noticed it's really good at just moving on. Like if something's not working, it doesn't hold up your workflow, which is very different from Zaps. So with Zaps, if an error happens somewhere in your workflow, a lot of times it can be hard to get it to continue on and like contextually figure out what to do. Agents are very good at that, which is impressive if you're used to working in a very like deterministic workflow world. It's going to take a little bit to run. Hopefully we can get a real result here. I can show you in a minute. That would be great. Lena, are there any questions in the chat while we wait for this to finish running?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we can jump back into your demo real quick, Sarah, but one thing that people seem to be asking is like, this is the complex use case. This was the award-winning use case. Might be a little out of their depth if they are very new to agents. That's okay. We are going to talk about that after Sarah's demo is done.
Mm-hmm. And also, just to plug, like I said, I built my first agent 2 months ago. So you can go from something simple for your very first use case to complicated with a lot of moving parts and information really quickly. I think something Wade says all the time is the gap between people who are who have these AI skills and who don't is so small right now. It's really easy to get to a point where you're an expert in this tool very quickly.
Yeah. Oh, and then another common question, Sarah. Why were you using 2 webhooks instead of 1?
Why was I using here in the step?
Mm-hmm.
I think I did this just for organization's sake and like cleanliness. I wanted to go super fast and I don't want anything to get caught up in an error. So if there's no information here, I don't want this app to error and then not ever run the agent. I want it to continue on no matter what it finds. So here, like for instance, if this looker query didn't return any information about the account, and then there was nothing to add to the digest, that might throw an error here. And it's easier for me to manage that because in my actual real use case, I'm doing this like 10 different times to find information in a bunch of different tools. It's just easier for me to manage each of those individually. I think you could do it in the same Zap if you wanted to, but for me, this is more organized.
Yeah, a lot of folks asking for like, why do you have 2 Zaps, 1 agent, or multiple webhooks, whatever. Sometimes that is just a personal preference for how you like to see the data in your Zap. Some of us are Sarah is more technical than I am, but I would say as like a less technical builder, sometimes I struggle when you're using the test data to figure out like, wait, which step did this come from? And having that be multi-part is a little bit easier. So because it'll break out those buckets of data separately in your Zap or in your agent. But that truly is a personal preference. There's no right or wrong answer there.
Yeah, and when you get to troubleshooting, what I found is it's so much easier to troubleshoot a Zap with 4 steps than if you have 45 steps in a Zap and you're trying to figure out exactly where something went wrong. This is just easier to manage for me. So that's why I do this. Okay, let's see. And then hopefully I can stop sharing my screen once. Okay, we got a complete status. Okay, so you can see it made a decision around the renewal. Let's see what it decided for Zapier's account. Okay, Zapier should be a plan expansion, which means we should be passed off to sales. You can see it gave an overview of our usage, a lot of use cases, growth indicators, Zapier's in the news, it gave an analysis, and then it created an email draft that the sales rep can use to send to the owner of the Zapier account for the renewal. Okay.
Amazing. Sarah, that was awesome. A lot of engagement in the chat. So much feedback. We're going to try and get to all of that. For those that were asking about templates or like where to start, we have a whole suite of templates. So obviously Sarah and I showed ours and you have access to those. But if you need another starting point, or if you just want to play around with a random use case, you can go to our templates and grab whatever makes sense. A lot of these we have tested internally. So there are a lot of these that like we use ourselves. So just know that they have been fully vetted by your Zapier team. Awesome. And then I think Ryan on our team was also dropping links to our YouTube channel. There are a lot of demos and additional resources. We can make sure to send those in the follow-up email as well. Okay, so next, I want to plug, before we get to the Q&A, because there's a lot of Q&A here. I want to plug our next event. So Lindsay, head of RevOps, Sara and I's fearless leader, is going to be doing another webinar in September. She and Ryan are going to be walking through AI Hack Week. So as you heard me mention at the beginning, we host Hack Weeks regularly so that we can encourage people to think outside of the box. And also it helps to use our own product and make our product better. If you want to learn how to structure one for yourselves, this is a great place to learn how to do that. And also, another plug for another event, our annual user conference, Zap Connect, is going to be on September 25th. You're going to see a lot of RevOps people there. Sarah's doing a demo there. Many of our coworkers, including Lindsay, our director, is going to be doing sessions at Zap Connect. This is a user-based conference. It is a lot of learning how to build things. It's a lot of getting in the weeds. And so you're going to be able to leave learning how to use our products even better or seeing cool use cases from other people. All right, now for what you've all been waiting for, we are going to get into Q&A. Sara, if there's any specific questions you want to jump into, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to try to call out the ones that were upvoted the most. So I think one of the most popular questions that we are getting in the chat is, why are you using an agent versus a Zap? Or when would you like nest an agent into the Zap? I'm going to give sort of as the less technical person of the two of us, I'm going to give my basic answer, and then you can go into like the weeds maybe. So my basic answer is the agent makes decisions for you. There are some things where like, in my demo, I didn't necessarily care about how it formatted like the summary. I didn't have specific requirements for how it spotted patterns with problems in the email validation path. The AI can make decisions for me, and that is totally okay. But you might have some places where you're like, I need this data to be structured exactly right. I need to send the data into one of my systems in the exact right way. The AI cannot make any decisions. Yeah, you can write that into an agent. It's a little trickier because it's not meant, it's meant to help you process jobs, help you do these jobs. A Zap is actually better for that, to ensure that it is always running in a repeatable way. Sara, I'll kick it over to you for your POV.
Yeah, same exact POV. So I actually started the Zap that I demoed all in an agent. And so I had the agent making that decision, and then I tried to get the agent to update the HubSpot deal with that deal type field. And the agent it was too creative. It wanted to like make up random properties and random values. And so I had to move that to the Zap in order for that value to stay consistent every time. The other thing that I ended up moving over to the Zap as well was the Slack steps, because I want to send the update, like which team should handle, to specific channels. And I didn't like AI trying to guess what channel to send it to. I wanted to be very specific, like, you're going to send it to this channel. The AI was just being too creative with that. So same thing you said, but more specific examples.
Yeah, agreed with that. Another common question in here is like, well, I don't use these tools. How do agents integrate with the tools in my tech stack? So like we discussed at the beginning of the presentation, we connect with over 7,000 tools, Zapier does. And so all of those can be brought into your agent. The other thing that is cool is that we can, you have the ability to not just use the specific steps that you would in a Zap. You can use API calls, you can use webhooks. Some of those things obviously are accessible in a Zap as well, but it's a lot of flexibility there. And the benefit of doing this through an agent, I say this, sorry, I'm a broken record. As the person that is less technical of the two of us, when I set up like a webhook in a Zap or an API call step in a Zap, I struggled with it, right? I would often need other team members to help troubleshoot if something wasn't working. And that takes time away from everyone. Whereas an agent can make those decisions for you. So as you were testing the agent, I don't know if people saw this, as Sarah was like testing the agent, it does give you feedback. So it says like, is this what you expected it to be? So you can reply and say like, no, that's not what I wanted, and edit the instructions as you're testing it. So yes, we do connect to tons and tons of apps, and you can modify the way you are receiving or sending data. Sarah, anything you would add to that?
I think that's perfect.
Yeah, awesome. Let me see. Oh, Sarah, how much do you have to like manually adjust things? Let's talk about just generally the testing experience with agents. I think a lot of people who have not built one before are like, wait, does it just run? How does it work?
Yeah. So when you're building it, it gives you the option to test data, especially when you're coming from a Zap. I think you might have seen that it labeled it as a test data, as a test sample, and it won't actually run the actions while you're testing. It just says what it might do. You can give the option to like approve it to actually do the action while you're testing. I think it's entirely dependent on the trigger. As long as you're setting up the trigger and the way that you want the workflow to run, it'll work just as expected after you turn on the agent.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, this is an interesting question. So, if we are new to Zapier, would it make sense to just use or build an agent versus a Zap? I don't know my answer to this. Sarah, do you have a strong opinion?
It took me, I'll be honest, it took me a long time to like really feel like I knew what I was doing with Zapier. It might have taken me like 6 months when I started working at Zapier to really be like, I can do literally anything in the entire world in this tool. So like 6 months to that magic feeling. What I might recommend, let me think.
Yeah.
I know we have a new Copilot tool, which
Oh,
I
yeah.
found super helpful. So if you're new to Zapier, I would really recommend looking at that Copilot tool, and it allows you to use natural language in both Copilot, I mean, in both agents and while you're building an actual like Zap workflow. And it really helps you visualize like where properties should go and what you're trying to do. It adds steps for you. It maps properties for you. I think it might be a super helpful learning tool for people new to Zapier. I don't think Zaps versus agents, like it just really depends. Do you want your workflow to do the same thing every time? Or do you want AI to give context and make decisions for you based on your workflow?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great plug for Copilot. I forgot to plug that earlier. Copilot is awesome. If you have not tried it, highly recommend. Even if you are very comfortable with Zaps or agents, try using Copilot. Like it just makes everything so much faster, and it plugs in. So you tell it, hey, I want to build a Zap that does A, B, C, and D, right? And then when Copilot runs, it will just automatically add those steps into your Zap or your agent. And then you can go in and adjust them, obviously, and tweak it as needed. But even for like a season builder, it just reduces a lot of manual work. It just makes you more efficient. Highly recommend. And then with Copilot, you can also chat with it. So if you're like, this is the error that I am getting back from HubSpot, we are not engineers. Sometimes I don't understand the API error that is being thrown my way. Copilot will help you to decipher this and give you like feedback about like, oh, it looks like X isn't passing through. Go double check that step. I think somebody had asked that in the chat and I lost that question. So great plug, Sarah. A lot of people are asking about guardrails. Sarah, what do you use for your guardrails, whether it's related to like API limits or just like human in the loop? What's your POV on that?
I'm a big human in the loop person, maybe not so much for internal use cases. So in the use case I shared, the only place that information is going is internally. Like it'll update the sales rep or it'll update the renewals team, but I'm not just sending comms out to customers without reviewing them first. I think that would be a little too ambitious for AI at this point. Some people are getting there. Some people are getting really good at like getting AI to be a customer facing thing. I'm still a little nervous about it. And so I use human in the loop in that way, being a little more lenient with using AI for internal use cases than just like letting it loose in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. All right, let me look through the questions. Oh, similar to the co-pilot answer, like I think a lot of people are interested in understanding better how to test with agents. So somebody has asked, multiple people have asked, what happens if your instructions aren't clear in the agent? Like, how do you provide it feedback? Sarah, anything you want to add that to what you've already said?
Yeah, I think when I was building this agent in particular, it tried to do a lot of things that were just like suspicious to me. Like it would try and run HubSpot updates that I didn't tell it to do. And so while you're testing, it'll give you feedback while you're testing. So like it'll tell you what it's trying to do. And while you're testing, luckily it'll say, do you want to actually take this action in the app? And you can say, no, don't do that. But then it won't make those updates for you automatically. You need to go back to your original prompt and say like, don't try anything else but what I'm trying to tell you to do. I found that was the best way to get it really like honed in on what I was trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I agree. And then more questions about setting up the agent. Can we set up the agent to run on command and not be triggered? So in my demo, I triggered it by the month. Yeah, you can set that up. You're gonna have to think through like what the command is. So like this is maybe a poor example, but like you could do like a Slack reactgy or something like that. I've not set one up by command, but you absolutely can. Sarah, anything you would add
Yeah,
to
there's
that?
also just like it's a chat. It's same thing as ChatGPT. So you can
Yeah.
go in there and like start a chat and it'll trigger an agent based on the chat as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like a Zapier trigger. You can also use it similar to the way you would ChatGPT.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's see. Scrolling through, y'all got a lot of questions. These are good questions. Sarah, while I look for, while I scroll through this massive list, what's your favorite part about using agents?
For me, my favorite part about using agents is that's a tough question. I like that. I think I like that it has a lot of context on Zapier's product already. And I see some questions around like, why would I use Copilot instead of ChatGPT too? I think using all of Zapier's tools in one place is really helpful because Zapier and its AI tools has context on what you're trying to accomplish with Zapier. Like it has context on the APIs, it has context on how to build a Zap. And so it's easy to get very specific information to like what you're trying to build. I found that when I take something to ChatGPT, it loses a lot of that context. So like if I take a code step to ChatGPT to run in a Zap, ChatGPT doesn't know the output of a code step that Zapier wants, but Copilot does. And so that's what I like about using Zapier's AI tools in general is that it just fits into workflows a lot better than other tools.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So also, sorry if I freeze. I'm getting an alert that my internet is a little iffy. A lot of people have asked about that. Sort of the like, how do I customize this? And I totally agree with that, Sarah. Like, it's like we everybody has a lot of tech that they need to integrate, and you might be pulling data from multiple places, you might be sending data back to multiple places, and every system has its own requirements. One of the benefits of using Zapier is that we connect to over 7,000 apps, and so adding AI into an agent, or sorry, adding this sort of AI into those existing workflows, whether it's through an agent or not, is a very natural step. That is the benefit of using Zapier as a platform. Okay, we are at time, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We will definitely be sending out the recording, all the resources, as well as the link to the events that we mentioned in the follow-up email. So please be sure to look out for that. Thank you guys so much for your enthusiasm. This was a really fun session. We hope you learned something from it. Sarah, thank you for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.